Hello, everyone. Welcome to Epic Events Podcast. This is Mohammed Younas, founder and CEO of vFairs, and today with me, I have Mike Frost, founder of ExpoCast. ExpoCast is a globally recognized as a leader in recruitment excellence for the exhibition and events industry. Mike, thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Mike, tell us a bit more about ExpoCast. When did you found this company? What was just the motive behind coming up with this brand?
Yes, so we launched ExpoCast in March of 2020. So we had 7 days of vacancies, which were falling like flies until the UK went into lockdown. So it was an interesting time to try to launch a business both in events and recruitment. In a bizarre way, it was slightly fortuitous that during that time, the events industry became very collaborative. So all of the hierarchy fell away, and we were able to join in with the industry conversations and I suppose create awareness of ourselves and the new business so that when recruitment did come back around, everybody I think was at least aware of who we were and we had a lot of inbound business, which was fantastic. In terms of the reasons why we launched, we'd both, so my former business partner, Natasha, we'd both previously worked within events recruitment, had stepped away from that last employer, and we'd met up at Christmas. And I made some joke about hiring her one day, and she told me there's no way she'd ever work for me, but she might be interested in partnering up. And so that joke turned into a semi-serious conversation. And within about 3 months, we'd ended up launching the business. So it wasn't necessarily a planned thing, but it just worked out that way. And yes, it's been an interesting journey, as I say, that first kind of 12 to 18 months during the pandemic. And then since then, really trying to support and react to the way the industry has been changing since then. And it's still changing constantly, just through various different things, whether it's the larger macro events happening around the world or the additional M&A that we're seeing. It's never the same. Even though it's the oldest, I suppose, format of people interacting in person,
Yep,
it's never.
absolutely. Mike, what are some of the most common roles that you're being asked to hire for within the industry?
I mean, the number one is always salespeople. There have been panels on where have all the good salespeople gone. It's a very common question. I think even in our pre-podcast notes, one of the questions was, how to identify what a really good salesperson would look like for events. Yes, there's always going to be a need for marketers, for content, for leadership as well. But I think if there was one particular role, it would be that individual sales contributor, particularly the hunter profile who can go out there and identify and win that new business. I think probably we're probably quite plentiful in terms of account managers, but it's that new business, that person who's willing to pick up the phone or just jump into an event not knowing anybody and just put themselves out there. That's a profile that I think most businesses can struggle to identify and bring in.
I had a guest in the podcast again from recruitment, just company within the events industry. I asked her exactly the same question, and her answer was exactly the same. I would have expected also because being in events, sales sales is the heart of the business. That's how you kind of have any company survive. That's just my natural next follow-up question is what's the mix of these companies looking for new fresh grad, someone with, I don't know,
Mm.
0 to 2 years of experience versus someone looking for like a sales expert who has been doing it for at least a good 5+ years? What's typically the ask from the employer? What do they prefer the most?
I'm afraid it's not a one size fits all answer, actually. It will really depend on probably the scale of the business and the organizational structure, and really their strategy towards recruitment, whether it's sales or anything else for that matter, because those grad schemes can often be good intakes for marketing and other disciplines as well. So larger businesses, I would say, are more inclined to go down that graduate intake scheme because it can end up saving them a large amount of their budget as opposed to recruiting at the more senior end. So the idea is that you bring people in at grad level and you promote them through the business, and it's a constant layering of succession planning as you move up. And obviously there will always be instances where someone's going to need to get recruited in at a mid to senior level from outside the business. But I think the ideal scenario is that companies are able to self-fulfill their own needs at whatever level they have an opening. Obviously, for a smaller business, that's not necessarily possible to be able to constantly be bringing in the right number of people at a bottom end. So that's where you would, I suppose, have that preference and necessity to recruit at a more senior level.
Perfect. And just high level, when it comes to fresh grads, just to get what kind of typically, like I would say, what's the typical OTE being offered nowadays within the market? Again, I know it will vary, but just for, again, someone who wants to get into the industry, who wants to get into the role, like, what can they expect?
Gosh, I mean, geographically, where are we focusing on for this question? It's there's so much. I was talking to somebody earlier actually, and a candidate who's going to be coming on the market in the next couple of weeks, and they said they know what their basic salary expectations needed to be, but different event businesses all pay entirely different types of commission or bonus structures, so it's very challenging. I suppose you're in Canada, so should we say North America, right? So forgive me for doing US dollars instead of Canadian.
No, I know. US is fine. Even pounds are fine. So either one of them is fine. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Well, hey, I'm in the UK, so I'll be selfish and go to the UK. So look, for the event tech market, I think if you are a grad, in theory, if we're talking sales function, you're probably stepping into a BDR, SDR type role as your first job. Look, again, I think there's quite a lot of variance, because typically a grad who is looking at tech sales, they're not just looking at event tech sales. So it's not just other event technology businesses that you're competing against. There was what was the example of the Salesforce VP of events role for $500,000 US
Yeah,
or something? And obviously that's not a grad level role, but I think that
exactly.
same difference in scale applies at the grad level. So I don't know if you can tell, I'm really reluctant to put a number on this.
No, I think my point is that what would be a competitive, for example, like, we are actively looking to hire salespeople and account managers both in the UK market. Again, we have presence over there, but most of the people that we hired, like naturally, like they have been with the company for like last 5-7 years. And, things change a lot in the last 5-7 years. I don't live in the UK market, so it's very hard for me to put a number.
Okay.
But I think with any of these things, the idea is that, if you will have this kind of an OTE, you will be good. It will be easier to attract talent for a company like this. So it's not that, if that salary would be good for a good 80% of the candidates, then that, you're offering a pretty good salary. But
yeah, okay. So fine. So look, if you're talking fresh out of university, then I would say you've got a lot more flexibility. You could be in the thousands for the basic salary. I think within tech, if you've got a candidate who's looking for that market, they probably will know enough that they would expect a 50-50 split. So they'd want the same on top in terms of the commission. Maybe not so much in that SDR function, but they'd like to see that it's getting there. And I think that vision of where it's going to is just as important as the salary itself. For someone stepping out of an SDR function into an AE where they're doing the full sales cycle, like mid 50s to 60s as a base. And then again, by that point, if they've been successful in the SDR role, they would probably expect to be able to get for the full sales cycle that 50-50 split then. So it wraps up really quickly. And so I work in the event tech space, but I also work with event organizers, like trade show organizers. And the differences in salaries is extraordinary.
And again, because I have only worked at the event tech space and not on the event organizer one. When you say they're different, just like which one is paying more?
For you guys, the tech.
That's what I would expect.
Yeah. So basically, you'll definitely see candidates from organizer side transitioning across into technology. would be very surprised to see many going the other way, purely because they probably can't afford to see such a drop in salary. So it's quite different. I think maybe on the large scale conferences side, if they're doing, six-figure sponsorship deals, they're probably earning quite good money. And there's some trade show organizers who have really commission heavy packages where salespeople can earn over 200 grand, but they're only on a 25k basic, for example. But those are the outliers, really.
Yeah. And Mike, so this is Fresh-grad, and I do have some follow-up questions on that one as well. But just coming back to hiring senior level people, right? If someone wants to hire, I don't know, a director or a VP, just walk us through your methodology. When a client comes to you, how do you typically go about filling up that particular position? Because these are extremely hard to fill.
They're so critical, right? I'm on one at the moment in the US, and it's highly confidential. Everybody's signed an NDA, myself, the client, every single candidate. And that's made it quite challenging, actually, because the first stage is really to have a conversation with all of the people who form part of that decision-making process within the client company. Because as much as everyone will have hopefully agreed on what the profile looks like, they'll all have slightly different takes or slightly different parts of that profile that they would prioritize, and slightly different ways that they would assess the person against that criteria. So it's really critical to understand all of those different perceptions in order to be able to make sure we're identifying, briefing, and assessing candidates in a way that's going to be comprehensive for the client at the various different stages of decision making. So once we've, I suppose, had all of those conversations, it would then be a case of really mapping out the entire market. So if a role isn't confidential, then obviously you can go to advertising and writing a very compelling job advert, not copy and pasting a job description, but writing a really compelling advert that talks to the applicants about what's in it for them as the kind of the first part, as opposed to what are they going to be doing. It's not like a wish list. We want to really sell it to them. That can be great, but obviously that's only ever going to attract the active candidates. So part of mapping out the market is to identify everybody who is capable of doing that job, and then from that point, it's a case of doing everything you possibly need to have a conversation with everybody on that list, right? And many of them are going to say, sounds good, but I'm not interested, or oh, actually no, that doesn't quite tick the boxes for me. And the idea is that you end up with a list of people who are both suitable and interested, and you're confident that that is a comprehensive list of everybody who fits the bill. And then it depends on the sense of urgency. If a client's if they want somebody to start yesterday, then we would introduce people as we go. Whereas if it's a bit more of a strategic hire, we can do all of the searching, all of the assessing and the comparisons, and then we can introduce a really confident shortlist and then manage people through that process.
Mike, within our companies, each one of the companies within the tech world, AI has been playing some role. I'm not saying a big role. I think a lot of people would say big role, but I think we're all trying to make it big. But we're all trying to figure it out what actually really makes us productive and what is just, it's good to have, but, are you using it consistently or not?
What's just shiny?
In recruitment, is AI making you productive in any way?
So I mean, I have a CRM system which is very specifically for recruitment. It's built for a recruitment business to use, and it's a great company actually. They are very responsive to customer needs and adding in new functionality and different areas of the platform. And they've started to add in a few bits of AI here and there. What I've found it to be useful for has been more analysis, for example. So I can feed it a job description or a job advert, and I can say to it, can you summarize which part of this candidate's experience are really relevant to this job? And then that helps me make a really compelling introduction to a client for that candidate. Whereas before I would have scoured through all of my call notes and emails and the CV and put that together myself. It's able to do that kind of compiling work quite quickly, which is brilliant. It's not there yet really in terms of matching candidates to a job. So I'm still doing the identifying and the communicating. I wouldn't want to put a candidate through an AI interview, for example. Especially for the events industry, our whole thing is bringing people together, and where I'm going to put you in front of an AI, it just doesn't make any sense. So there are ways in which it can help speed up parts of the process and make me more productive. But I'm very conscious that I don't really want it to touch the candidate experience at all.
Makes sense.
And then obviously it'll be the other way in which it comes into play is that some candidates are using it to support their applications. I haven't fortunately come across an entirely fake person making it through to a screening stage with me yet. I'm sure my time will come, but I think that's one of the benefits of being so niche. And I hear this in my recruitment circles as well, is that your generalist recruiters will be the ones who maybe suffer a bit more with the development of AI. But if you're niche, you can see, you'd be able to see through it if it's not truthful, what you're seeing. It's simultaneously a huge industry, but also a tiny industry. And I think I'd probably, if someone had a fake CV with fake jobs, I'd probably say, well, no, you didn't do that, because I know the person that did do that job at that time for that company. So it can't possibly be you. So there's that. And then obviously, I think the other big part of AI is actually understanding how clients are incorporating it into their business, because it's a big concern for employees and candidates alike these days. Is their job going to be at risk because of companies wanting to, it's a natural thing. Companies want to cut costs as much as possible. And AI will be an amazing tool for that. I was having a conversation similar to this earlier with the Association of Event Organisers, who I'm partnered with. And I'd much rather see companies enable their employees to increase their productivity using AI as opposed to reduce headcount due to AI. In theory, hopefully, by adjusting the responsibilities of people, you could just increase revenue per employee.
Exactly.
Rather than maintain your current level of growth and just drop the headcount, we could just do that with the growth and maintain the same headcount.
No, I love that mindset. Of course, everyone has a right to do what they want to do, but that's exactly what I keep on telling people within our company. The goal is for any company to be more productive, and that does not have to come at the expense of people or the direction of the cost. We can have more revenue.
And the technology is moving so quickly that I suppose, a concern I have, it won't rear its head yet. It'll be, I imagine, in a few years' time, is that when companies feel AI has got to a stage where it can contribute more so to the content side of things, whether that's marketing or putting together a conference program, you will obviously for a period have an experienced person who is double checking AI's homework, right? And making sure it's not made any mistakes and making sure it's not hallucinated anything. But,
Absolutely.
Wait a few years and that person who's doing that quality control will have progressed, and you'll need somebody else to do the quality control. But nobody will have had the hands-on experience to know what good looks like. So, hey, maybe by that time, AI will actually be better than us at content creation. Yeah. Who knows?
Mike, I'll just tell you exactly, because we are a tech company. It's 270 plus employees. We are big on AI. We're spending a lot of money on AI. We're doing lots of projects on AI. I'll just tell you firsthand experience of someone who is on top of it. See, when you have an extremely hardworking employee, what happen is, again, fresh grads, new employee with a couple of years experience, what happens is that they do a lot of work, but then that also comes to you in the form of, oh, what should I do next? Or is it right or not? Etc. So you get a lot of things that you have to look through. Just because someone is working really, really hard, you want to make sure that they keep on working hard, they get an opinion. Now, AI bots are working 24/7, and they're not perfect like any other human. So the amount of times things has to be reviewed, checked, or be told of what to do next has gone up by 10 times just because there was someone who's working 6, 7 hours, 8 hours, but now there's something that's working 24/7, 7 days a week, 5 days a year. So before, like for a human, they're also smart enough to figure out, okay, what's more important to be checked by us, you, and what's maybe not less important. With AI, of course, they're throwing everything at you, check, review, blah, 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 etc. So now we have added this extra layer of checks that, by the way, I cannot answer every single thing that's asked by AI because that's humanly becoming impossible. So we're now adding this algorithm. Let's just only worry about the top 20%, and the rest 80% is actually noise that I have to ignore at this point. Because if I keep on answering those, then the reality is becomes almost impossible to do that. So
the 80-20 rule rears its head again.
yeah,
Excellent.
so AI consumes a lot of bandwidth from the people who are supposed to handle that AI, and it will keep on doing it for months and maybe year to come. But after that, it does become this monster that can run on its own. But it's not that you can do anything and let AI run for at least months before you perfect it.
Yeah, it's the same with any large scale change. You have to really invest the time and the efforts into setting it up properly. Otherwise, you'll just do a terrible job. It won't deliver what you need it to do, and it will potentially have caused absolute chaos in the meantime.
So, Mike, in your role, you interview, of course, hundreds and hundreds of people. What separates the top talent, and specifically the talent within sales, from everyone else? Like, how do you see that? Because I've been doing recruitment for almost 20 years. I also come from like a recruitment tech background before I came into event tech. And again, being a founder for over 10 years, being an employee for almost over 20 years, I haven't figured it out. I still make mistakes. I will hire really, really good people, and then I'll end up hiring person, who's just not a great fit.
I think the thing to remember is that in recruitment, multiply that by the events industry, even more so. We're dealing with human beings, and there's just an infinite amount of variance and unpredictability with human beings. And also, life happens to us all constantly. I'm going to go slightly personal here. I wasn't expecting this. But the period, my last 6 months of being an employee was the 6 months where my father was really poorly and ended up passing away. And I think I was just about hitting my target, but I wasn't the same employee that I was 12 months earlier. My performance wasn't there. So, but in terms of identifying what a good candidate looks like during that interview stage, what really makes people stand out, I actually think it's about their communication, the way that they communicate. So somebody who, part of that interview process is discussing the real life experiences that someone has had in various different areas and how they talk about those. And obviously at that point it's often just entirely anecdotal, but because we really understand the market, and we can tell by the way that they are recalling those stories, it'll handle how they're gonna it'll show how they're gonna handle themselves in challenging negotiations, for example, how they're going to approach it, the way that they manage clients and stakeholders. And I think just someone with a level head, because oftentimes, with salespeople, you might sit in an interview with a salesperson, you think they're so super confident, they're going to be brilliant, but actually someone who's a bit more pragmatic, someone who shows you that they can understand various different perspectives and they can communicate and navigate better during the recruitment process. If they can, empathize with you, the interviewer, with your customer base, I think that ability to listen helps them adapt, because again, they're selling to human beings. Yes, it's sales and procurement to a certain extent, but actually it's still human beings at every stage of the process. So, in the same way that no job is exactly what it says on the job description, no candidate is exactly what they say on the CV. So I think that level-headedness and seeing someone's ability to really empathize from another person's perspective in sales, yes, but actually across all disciplines, I think is a huge thing to look for as a real positive.
Mike, course, it looks like you have a recruitment background before you even founded this company as well. What's the difference between hiring for events, company, industry in general versus anything else? Like, is there a difference? Because I know that a lot of people in event tech specifically prefer hiring people who has done event tech sales.
Yeah.
Does it
Okay.
really matter? Does it make a big difference?
So yeah. So look, it obviously depends on the role, right? If and I suppose how much they will be dealing with customers. I was speaking to somebody earlier, and there's no need for an event specialist recruiter to be really involved on the dev side of things, because the devs don't need to know. They just need to understand which platforms, which technologies they're going to be working on, right? Whereas in sales, I guess it depends. If it's a new business person, yes, they can identify and knock down some doors. But if they've got a black book of contacts, then that's usually preferred, and they're only going to have that if they've got the events experience. I think the other side is what your onboarding process looks like. Because if you as a business have got a really comprehensive onboarding process that can upskill somebody regardless of where the gaps are, then you can widen your candidate pool, right? It could be, because I recruit for event tech, but also on the organizer side. So if I've got an organizer who runs events for the energy industry and they want to hire a salesperson, well, if their onboarding process is just as good at training somebody up on how to sell an event as it is on training somebody up on how to speak to an energy event, an energy professional, well, then we can look at people from both sides. I could introduce candidates with the sector experience of energy or with the events experience, and they just need to learn the other part. I think with technology, again, I suppose it's either, ideally they've got it all right. They've sold technology and they know the events industry. But I have seen successful people move from, say, the organizing side into tech, because so they would have been client side, right? And now they understand what a client wants, so that they know how to then sell that. But then, you see people from other tech areas, other SaaS companies moving into the event space. I would suppose from an anecdotal perspective, I've probably heard more often that those hires don't tend to work out as well.
Mhm.
I mean, my whole positioning is that I will bring in the talent that has events experience already. So I felt like I should put a disclaimer in there that there wasn't my placement. But yeah, I think it really does come down to how well set up the company is to make sure that those skills gaps are filled.
Yeah, yeah. I would say the same. See, I'll tell you, as a company, of course, you feel that if someone already know the events industry, they already know the vocabulary, they already know the language,
Mm.
etc. So you feel that you can just bypass the training process for something like that, because remote, um, with remote work, that onboarding becomes a burden on the hiring manager, I believe, and that's why the hiring managers end up preferring people from the events
Mm.
industry. And I also agree that it helps a lot. Anytime you know the industry, it helps a lot.
Mm.
And and then when it comes to the tech piece of it, of course, that everyone will need to be trained on the product itself. So I think that's a must. But if they
Yeah.
have done technology sales, at least they know the basics of how to go about giving a demo of any particular product.
Yeah, and I think this is it, right? That's where, moving somebody from the organizer side, all they've sold is, I say all, I don't want to undermine them, is square meters, right? And that's going to be a very different, they're not doing a discovery call and a demo for square meterage on a show floor. So that's definitely a skills gap that needs to be filled. I think, that onboarding it's so critical to get that right, whether it's you're a remote first business or not. And there are ways to make that less of a burden on the hiring manager. It's an impossible thing to really calculate, because if you're struggling to find talent that has got the events experience, well, then you might be adding another month or two onto the recruitment process trying to find somebody, by which point you could have hired the non-events person who had SaaS experience and had them trained up already. So it's really challenging, and sometimes it's hindsight, right?
Yeah,
That shows maybe you should have made a different decision.
absolutely. What are some of your suggestions to the candidates of how they can stand out, especially those fresh graduates? Because nowadays the challenge I see is that whether you're posting a job on LinkedIn or on your own website, etc., it's very hard to stand out. Are there ways to stand out just to get your application noticed?
Yes. Well, look, so let's obviously keep this specific to the events industry. So the events industry exists because people need to talk to each other and network. So for somebody who wants to enter this industry, I would suggest networking is the key way that you can stand out. And I actually recorded a lecture around this there's a company called Event Crowd in Bournemouth here in the UK, and they run a diploma course actually, and I did a guest lecture. I'll see if I can dig out the video link and share it with you. But you know, the networking angle, there are so many different ways in which you can approach that. Whether it is going, doing some research, who are the types of companies that I would really like to work for, approaching the leaders within that business, trying to build some kind of rapport with them, just being really honest about, hey, I'm a grad. I'm looking for this kind of job in your kind of company. Can we just have a conversation sometime? Maybe you can help me with some advice on what your recruitment process looks like. What are the most favorable ways for applicants to get in touch with you? Whether it is getting involved in things like Event Tech Live, making sure that you're coming to that show in November, for example, and going around all the stands, introducing yourself. I think that real proactive approach to trying to secure, and it's a lot of effort, and it can involve really stepping outside of your comfort zone. I'd actually class myself as an introvert, and it's just been through brute force that I've ended up feeling fairly natural, in terms of walking up to people and striking up a conversation. But every now and then the introversion hits me and I'm like, I don't want to do it. It just takes me a while to gear myself up. But there are associations for the events industry who would love for proactive people to really want to join, because it's a classic thing, isn't it, that most people fall into the events industry by accident, and there's this it would be such a beneficial change if the events industry was one that people really were proactively deciding to come into. So if you are someone who knows this is what you want to do, then being proactive, networking, speaking to as many people as possible, asking for advice. Actually, people are pretty happy to give advice. People are like, they love it. If they see someone who's chosen this as their industry, they're going to be like, oh, brilliant. Yeah, of course. I'd love to help.
Absolutely.
Where do you live? Do you think you're sales, marketing? What do you want to do? Can I introduce you to a few people? There's various like mentorship schemes out there. So I think as soon as you start talking to people, you will almost just open up more and more avenues to follow. It'll just be like a tree and branches that all spreads out, and you'll end up with this extraordinary network of people who are aware of you, what you want to do, and they will just float your name as and when they hear opportunities. And that, I would say, is the best way to stand out. I think when it comes to just applying for jobs, I don't really think on a CV there's any way you can stand out. Certainly not as a grad. If you've got a bit of experience, I always say to candidates, look, make it really quantifiable information, right? Especially for
Yeah.
sales. I want to see the numbers, what the target was, what you actually achieved against it, anything else that you can show that, oh gosh, what's the word, that helped, growth of the business, really tangible stuff. But if you're a grad, then you're not going to have that, right? Obviously, if there's volunteer experience you've picked up, yeah, brilliant. But I think other than that, it just has to be the networking side.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mike, again, as an attendee, which event do you like the most? Like, again, maybe in this role, maybe in the role before that.
Yeah.
And again, it can be any event. It doesn't have to be within the event tech or events industry. Just any
Yeah, no,
particular event that you
that's a
love.
good question. It's a really good question. Goodness, I might upset people if I don't say their one. So I've, as well as I've got a partnership with Event Tech Live. So obviously I'm a huge fan of that event. The other main strategic partnership I've got is with the Association of Event Organisers here in the UK. And I really enjoy their People's Awards. They launched it 3 or 4 years ago. I think it's their 4th edition coming up in January or February next year. So they do a big AEO Excellence Awards every year. It's huge, and you get like 1,100 people in a big ballroom. It's trade show of the year, consumer show of the year, all of these big, like, loads of companies, they buy tables and tables for their people, and it's a great night of celebration. But the People's Awards that they launched is about celebrating the individuals who wouldn't necessarily get the same recognition on that industry-wide scale. And it's such a different vibe. You can see there's so much more emotion to it. Like, obviously, not at your other industry awards, teams, they're always really happy when their company wins an award. But when it's your colleague who's won an award, like, it really recognizes that. And it was quite extraordinary, the stark difference of celebrating individuals compared to companies. And I think, I'd probably put that as my number one. It gets you in the feels.
Nice. One last question. Again, you go to an event, a lot of exhibitors like us, spends sometimes a lot of time and sometimes also a lot of money to get swag on the booth, on the stand, like as giveaways and gifts for anyone who visit the booth. Just like, what's your take on swags? And do you pick up a swag in any of the
Yeah, I don't know. I think swag, sometimes it almost depends on the attendee. I think, some attendees, they will pick up the swag and it'll help kind of spark a memory of, what that company does. They'll might remember the demo a bit more, and it will be that catalyst to, them becoming a really viable product. Other attendees, they might just show up with their tote bag and want to fill it with stuff, right? And it is different. And others actually aren't as interested in the swag. I think I do see more and more people wanting to look at more sustainable options for swag. I don't think anybody really has a need for a squeezy stress ball or another water bottle, for example. So finding something a bit different that is going to be either genuinely useful. I think someone was doing. I think I saw somebody post about this the other day. What was your most long used or most useful bit of swag you picked up? And someone had got a phone bank, like a battery charger with a brand name on it. So I think really thinking into the longevity, usefulness, and sustainability of swag, I think, is a worthwhile train of thought to follow. But I just think it varies on the attendee. I really do.
There's no magic formula to that. I also figured it out. Yeah.
And hopefully, the salesperson and the product actually do the business, and you could, if those two are strong enough, then you don't need any swag, right? People will just go, well, that was the most amazing thing I've seen at the show. I'm gonna reach out to them again when I get to the office next week, swag or not.
I agree. Mike, if someone wants to get in touch with you, want to learn a bit more about your company, what's the best way for them to connect?
So LinkedIn. Hopefully, I'm fairly easy to find if you type in Mike Frost ExpoCast. The website is expocast.co.uk. My email is mike@expocast.co.uk, and that hopefully would be enough, for people to come and find me.
Thank you so much, Mike, for being on the podcast today. Learned a lot of things. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. We'll see you in the next episode of Epic Events Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.